All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the customer service and retention workshop. Just wanted to send a few thank yous out, and then we'll introduce our panelists and get into our topics. Want to thank Ron and his NSF staff for putting on this event. The National Sports Forum continues to be a leader in this space, and we really appreciate everyone's time this morning to join. My name is Sean Bell with the Golden State Warriors. I'm honored to be here today, co-leading today's workshop with Cole Cook.
Everybody, it's great to meet and see everyone virtually. As Sean mentioned, Cole Cook with the Florida Panthers. This is the customer service and retention workshop. So over the next hour, we're going to go into a couple of different topics. The first being data and what to do with it. The second is the fan experience and how it continues to evolve. And then we're going to wrap up with maintaining relationships both in person and virtually.
And we have the pleasure of hearing from some guest speakers and subject matter experts during each section of the workshop from as many different perspectives as possible. And we're pre-recording this session. However, please don't hesitate to drop a question via the chat function below, and we'll do our best to answer on event day. Without further ado, let's jump right into the first topic of today. Cole, I'll kick it to you for data and what to do with it.
Love it. Let's get right to the numbers. So with that being said, just want to take a quick moment to thank all of our panelists for being here and give them a chance to just introduce themselves. So as Sean mentioned, we've got a bunch of different verticals here. So Heather, why don't we start with you? Just name, title, and kind of 15-second pitch on your background and who you are.
Sure. Heather Pease with Angel City FC. I'm the Senior Director of Ticketing and Data Strategy. And that encompasses everything from fan experience, getting people in the buildings, and then actually, across the board, from an organizational perspective, looking at how we can drive more revenue through data.
Love it. Reese.
Thanks, Sean and Cole. Reese Fisher, Senior Director of FISA at the NHL. FISA is our recently rebranded Fan Intelligence Strategy and Analytics Group. At a high level, we spend our time really split between driving data-driven decisions at the league and supporting our 32 clubs and helping them better understand their own data.
Thanks, Reese. How about Sandeep?
Thanks, Cole. I'm Sandeep Satish, Vice President of Strategy and Analytics for E15 and Managing Director of our newly created DBK Studio. Really, those two focus on data analytics for our food and beverage and merchandise business. And the DBK aspect is really what's next in technology, which we'll cover quite a bit on today.
Love it. And last but not least, Noelle.
Noelle Crooks. I'm the Director of Business Intelligence and CRM for the San Francisco 49ers. So I oversee our fan feedback initiatives, data warehouse, CRM, lead generation strategies, etc.
Love it. Well, certainly, as a member of the BI world, it's great to have a panel full of people in the analytics and data space. So with that, let's dive into it. So as we've heard for many years, the advancements with technologies, teams, leagues, organizations are using more and more data to really optimize their business. And I think we've seen how data has been used to help kind of evolve the personalized marketing, the sales efforts. How is data helping teams sell season tickets, merchandise, corporate partnerships, etc.? That's what we really want to dive into today with this group of great panelists. So with that, I just want to kind of open with a pretty broad, open-ended question, and each of you can kind of chime in and go around the horn. But the first one would be, can you all discuss how data plays a crucial role in evaluating fan sentiment within your organization and how that information plays into retaining your customers for future or events or transactions? So why don't we start with let's start with Noelle. You guys are certainly a leader in the Bay Area, and let's dive into Levi's Stadium a little bit.
Yeah, so data and fan sentiment are two of our favorite things. So we've been doing post-game surveys for several years. And what we like to do when we send out post-game surveys is we like to make changes, game to game. And so we were doing that for a while, and then we wanted to be able to make sure we did it in real time as well. And so then we sort of adjusted our strategy to in addition to doing post-game surveys, we'll also do some real-time feedback. So we use Happy or Not terminals. So if you see those terminals, you've probably seen them at airports with the smiley faces. We use those a lot to track real-time feedback. And that way we can help improve the fan experience in real time while fans are at the game with us.
Love that. Sandeep, how about from your perspective in the F&B space? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, Noel has a good build. We obviously partner closely with the 49ers on the food and beverage piece of that, what you described. But really for us, I mean, it's the lifeblood of everything that we do, honestly, whether it's point of sale data, analyzing what we're selling, product placement, pricing, how do we think about event to event changes, optimizing the right retail and food and beverage kind of choices for our fans. But as Noel mentioned, equally important, really that our teams do as a proxy with us in conjunction. What is that fan sentiment? What is it tied to in terms of service, food quality, the interaction that our guests have with food and beverage and retail is an important piece. And that third pillar is really outside research, right? What are our fans doing when they're not with us so that we can program more optimally in the building?
Love that. Heather, how about for you? A little bit different of a world, just a team launching and certainly not as much data as the rest of us maybe, but what are you guys doing at Banc of California in LA?
So I think this started out pretty early on the fan surveying side. It was last summer we executed a pricing survey to our about 2,000 seat deposit holders. And to your point, launching a new team and not really having a great comparable in NWSL, we're trying to compare ourselves to a lot of men's leagues, the top 5. We wanted to make sure that what we were going to do from pricing the building was going to be appropriate because we didn't want all of these 2,000 seat deposit holders to say you outpriced me, you undervalued, the different sections for the amenities. So we went out to all of our fans and said, for this location with these amenities, would you pay X? And that really helped to guide our pricing. So we already had a great shell in place. There were actually some areas in which we could have raised prices more based on fan feedback. But being in year one and wanting to make sure that we were as approachable in the market as we could be to as many people as possible, we decided to keep a couple of sections flat, given the feedback. So I would say that was kind of our starting point, and has led to 15,700 season ticket holders thus far, which is crazy. And then, like Noel said, we also do post-game surveys, and that has been, incredible, just engaging satisfaction with FanFest, right? Like we're putting these things on, and of course we're hosting and talking to fans prior and saying, what do you want to see? What does Angel City mean to you? And we're in the community a lot, but actually getting some feedback post-game is always very successful to help guide us. And I would say one small example is people are saying, we want more music in FanFest. And we might be doing a dance battle this Saturday because of that.
You got to get some TikTok influencers there from your backyard. Reese, how about from the league's perspective? What are you guys seeing as it relates to fan sentiment?
Sure. It's a little different from our standpoint as we're not putting on games and making changes in real time, perhaps in the same way. But Cole, I know you're familiar with our ticket buyer trend study that supports all of the clubs and kind of provides them with that data on their fans. And we can touch on that a little bit later, but that's certainly a way that we can get, responses from fans, understand how they're feeling. We also look at social media sentiment. So that's a little bit more broad, but understanding how different actions by the league or things that happen on the ice, how that is being viewed by our fan base. And then we're building our own internal database. So some of you may have heard about Blade, which is our internal fan data warehouse. And through that, we'll be able to tell how people are feeling, through their actions. What does that say about them? What does that say about their future intentions? And how can we help grow the business?
Awesome. Well, I think we all kind of just hit on the season ticket members and understanding their fan sentiment. So with that, we all know kind of season ticket members, ticket package buyers, they make up such a large chunk of a club's recurring revenues. And the first starting point really when you're developing a budget and your sales goals for your ticket sales department is understanding what that base is going to be. And so with that in mind, just maybe for Noel, Reese, and Heather, kind of which data points are you identifying as the most valuable to your organization when you're looking at either renewal propensity or forecasting what that fan's future intentions are? And I think we all kind of know there's attendance, there's distance to venue, some of the more basic ones, but would really love to hear if there's any unique metrics that you guys have identified that are a key indicator on renewal intentions. why don't we start with Heather, just given you're the first season and maybe haven't started renewals, but you at least know where your base is today.
Yeah, so we've hosted 2 home games. So this is a tough question for us because we've done 2 post-game surveys and are going into, a lot of renewal planning very actively, as you can imagine. So I do think that actually we will be looking at a little more of the basic data points and actually just seeing what fans tell us. So I think going into 2024, we're going to have a much better handle on those things that do indicate renewal intent. One thing that a lot of teams have seen on the women's side that are brand new is you get a lot of people who say, I really want to support you. And that support is in the form of a season ticket purchase. That doesn't necessarily mean that they want to attend every game. So we're curious to see if that trend holds out with us. Now, our scan rates have been great. People are certainly, whether they're driving or flying or metroing to the games, they certainly have been. But I think that'll be really interesting to see plan out is that concept of support, i.e. donation, coming a lot in the form of season tickets, or is that something that, we're going to be able to retain the space at a very, very high level over time? So I do think we'll be looking at the general ones in terms of attendance and who you're coming with. And, LA is fickle. So do people travel over the summer? We have a lot of back-to-back games with our, co-tenant in the building, LAFC. And so that'll be also really interesting to see, okay, are people fatigued from a Friday night if they want to come to a Saturday game? Now, we're completely separate entities, and we, certainly do have a crossover base. That's not everybody. But I think that'll be an interesting impact as well.
Love that. It's definitely a unique approach you guys have taken, and I think it's going to really set the standard going forward for expansion teams. How about Reese, from the league's perspective? Obviously, we've had a lot of meetings on renewal and retention, but what are you guys seeing as it relates to some of the key indicators?
I think you hit on the big ones. I mean, as it pertains to attendance, I think the biggest key is acting on attendance trends as they are happening, right? So when a fan doesn't show up, when that ticket isn't scanned 2 games in a row or 3 games early in the season, that's the time for that service rep to act, not waiting until it's renewal time and seeing that the attendance rate is low, right? By that point, it may be too late. Tenure is another one I don't think was mentioned yet, right? So we all know that first and second year accounts are less likely to renew, but how do we quantify that, and how do we act and potentially treat them differently? And what does that mean in order to kind of encourage them and bring them back? And then the last one I'll touch on is, what are you doing with your tickets when you don't use them? So most of our teams have 44 home games. Like, that is a lot of games to dedicate to go into the arena 44 times a year. Can you resell your tickets? Are you sharing your tickets? If there is a market to resell your tickets, are you getting the amount you paid back for those tickets? Are you at least breaking even? We've certainly heard anecdotally from teams that one of the reasons fans don't renew is I can't resell my tickets, or I feel like I'm losing money, right? So how do we make sure that they are getting what they want back from that investment, even if they're not just looking to enter the arena 44 times a year?
Awesome. And switching gears to someone who has 8 or 9 home games, what are you guys looking at in San Francisco, Noelle?
Yeah, very similar to Reese. We like to track to see if you're not going to use your season ticket, essentially, what is that realization rate going to be? Are you going to forward it? Is it still going to get used? And are you still going to find value with it? So that's a big piece that we look at as well when we think about renewals. But then when you think about like future fans on how to kind of track that journey and see, who are our next season ticket holders going to be, a big piece that we look at there that we started to dive into is marketing engagement. So we'll assign a specific marketing lead score to our fans. So you'll get, different number of points added if you view the season ticket webpage versus, a photo gallery, for example. So we've been trying to, layer in how fans are interacting with our brand and seeing from there which fans are more likely to convert, as we think about continuing to grow our season ticket base.
Awesome. That's a perfect segue into our next question around kind of, now that we've collected all this data, whether it's marketing data, attendance data, tenure, Axiom, demographic information, how are you guys leveraging that with your staff? I think often the BI team is super involved when it comes to scoring the leads and offering up the renewal propensity, but how are the reps actually on the phones, the ones doing the hand-to-hand combat, taking that data and leveraging it with your members? Maybe Noelle, let's start with you, just as it relates to CRM and what you're giving the reps access to see, because I think we all kind of have that hesitation of, I don't want to put someone's income on their fan profile because that might be used the wrong way on the phone, but would love to hear from the panel on that.
Yeah, so for our season ticket holders specifically, we will put their fan satisfaction score so that they can see, based on our post-game surveys, where their members fall. And we also have them track in CRM when they're talking to their members what that satisfaction rate is. So say, for example, a rep was calling a season ticket holder about a payment, but then they also mentioned that they had a great experience with concessions. They're able to track, okay, concessions, I'm satisfied. And then we'll pipe that into a report so you can see based on where they're sitting in the stadium or based on the service rep, what their satisfaction levels is. And that helps us make decisions on, okay, if this section has a lower score in a specific area, we can make those adjustments. And then on more of the prospecting side, we won't show the exact lead score because we don't want to bias the reps on their sales strategy. But we do internally on the BI side, we will score those leads, and our sales teams trust that we're giving them the best leads and the most qualified ones that they should be spending their time with.
Love it. Real quick, Sandeep, how are you guys collaborating with teams when they do have that fan feedback from members on improving the F&B experience?
Yeah, that's a big part of our job, I would say, is like working with Noel and the team to say, okay, you just mentioned concessions, right? So what is it about the score? Look, 49 is a little different with member inclusive now. So we're really learning more about what does that mean for fans? What do they like with the technology? What do they like with the offering, the variety? So to us, those scores are critical to make changes to get better, because we know at the end of the day, every fan is a food expert. They love taking surveys on food. They know it, right? They think they can say what they want about price and quality and variety, but they're going to say a lot about food. So how do you take that with a grain of salt and really analyze the meaningful impact, especially to service, quality, technology? That's what we're really looking for with our partnerships.
Love it. How about you, Heather?
Well, I think Sandeep brings up a really good point of making sure you're cutting through, a lot of the things that we typically hear at every venue. So this is the second venue I've worked at in LA, but fifth overall. And, we always know that parking is going to be difficult. And so I think there's both, an internal expectation management in distributing this information, and whether that's to the reps or to leadership. That's something that we've talked about a lot. We were born from innovators and entrepreneurs, not from people who, have been in sports for 20 years. And so for me, being in my fifth team, there's a lot of education to say it's okay that people have parking feedback. Now, if it gets to a certain point, obviously we're going to talk about that and address it when somebody says, I had a gold lot pass and I was turned away. But ensuring that there's that internal education. And then also, I know we're going to talk about it, but, for things that are actionable, making sure that we're following up on those. So, certainly when it comes to the reps, we're providing, the level of detail that we think is necessary. Obviously, if there's customer service issues, clearly, or if they have great feedback, we obviously want to share that and address any concerns. And then, again, since we're so early, we're just, learning how to inform our internal staff, again, both the rep level and at the leadership level.
Love it. Reese, any thoughts there on CRM and retention score?
I think it's important to have leadership buy-in for the value of analytics, right? So we've observed over the years organizations where analytics kind of sits in a corner and does their own thing. And then there's other organizations where almost every decision is data-driven and kind of runs through that group in collaboration with the verticals that are most relevant, whether it be sponsorship, marketing, social media, ticketing, et cetera. So I think it's super important for in this case, ticketing leadership to have the buy-in for what the data is telling them, and then to help prioritize, where the reps are going, who are they contacting first. As far as your question earlier, I forget who mentioned it, but about knowing or revealing what we know to the fans, I think there's maybe a little bit of a line, right? Fans come to expect that you know what they do. It's what you do in almost any other form of business, right? When you go on your Netflix knows what you've watched. The airlines, hotels know where you've stayed before, right? So I think it's perfectly acceptable for a sports team to know what tickets you've bought in the past, or whether you've come to the game, or whether you've resold that ticket. To know something that's maybe a little bit more personal, like your income level, I think that might be where we're getting into a bit of a gray area, and we have to be really careful in what the reps are communicating over the phone.
Awesome. And I know we've kind of hit on this a little bit, but want to just dive into really on the fan feedback, and what are you guys doing to action on that? We all do post-game surveys. We do season ticket member surveys. Noel's got Happy or Not rolling, but what are the ways that you are actually taking the insights out of those panels and making actionable feedback? So I don't know if anybody has any great examples they want to share. Maybe Sandeep, let's start with you in the F&B space, how you guys are collecting feedback and then giving that back to your clients.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely tangible examples of this, right? You look at the NFL is probably, I would say, a little bit easier to make game-to-game changes, given that you have a week to learn from that data, right? I know Noel and the team and Moon and Allison and everyone sits with our food and beverage team. They go through all the results, and then they actually really look to make legitimate changes from game to game, whether that could be by time, opponent, etc. The real changes that you can make, I think, are around product, right? Are we seeing a demand for maybe more variety, more package, more healthy, et cetera, and then you actually make the change and make sure your fans know about it, because I feel like that last piece is often missed. Like, there actually is quite a number of healthy options in our stadiums. Fans just don't know about it. Then there could be some things with speed of service, technology, and pricing in those different buckets, right? So fans do really clamor for value. Are you actually maybe doing a curated value offering, right? And again, telling that story. So change is much harder than it looks, especially for NHL, NBA, where you got a game the next day. So how much can you really change given the Herculean effort to put together each operational night? But when you can, after a homestand or after a month, it's really taking that insight, translating it into something that you could show and tell. And that last piece is so critical, telling your fan what changed.
Love that. Heather, any thoughts on actionable insights that you guys are doing right out of the gates here?
Yeah, absolutely. I joked and mentioned the dance battle earlier, but sincerely, since we're really just getting some more formal information back from our clients, we really are combing through like at a very low level of every single comment. Last year when we signed Kristen Press, one of the things that we had done is we aggregated all of the fan open comments from that pricing survey I mentioned, and so many people had said, please bring Kristen Press back to LA. So we actually used that in some of our marketing materials. So I would say that, we're really going through on that level. And then additionally, obviously funneling things like, ticketing and making sure that that is, siphoned to the right people, making sure that everything related to concessions goes to our partner with Legends. And so ensuring that everyone has that data. And then just 2 weeks ago, we hired a business and data insights analyst who internally is going to drive that. So certainly what I've seen as a best practice is it's one thing to have, your analytics arm. And then if nobody's kind of quarterbacking that internally and you're just saying, hey, head of merchandise, go make sure that you read this fan surveying, like that doesn't always happen. So we're making sure that, he has the keys and the tools to be able to get in a room and present to people. And then also follow up to say, what actions have we taken to ensure that we are actually making changes that will impact our fans?
I love it. Noel, how about I know we've all talked about Happy or Not, and certainly the COVID has changed those a little bit, I can imagine, but you guys are probably one of the most real-time feedback venues in the country that I'm aware of. How are you guys really leveraging and making changes during the game even?
Yeah, so we partnered with SAP to help us build what we call the Executive Huddle, which is essentially our data war room on game days. So it is a suite that in the front, there's guests that are enjoying the game. And then in the back is there's a touch screen, there's a ton of TVs that are feeding in all of our data and aggregating that into dashboards that we can read and essentially be like detectives. So we're able to see, okay, like our scan rates at this gate, are they above average? Should we send more staff out there to come help? Or, for our concessions with our member inclusive menu, if we can see, at this concession stand, there is more members redeeming their benefits, but less staff there, we can help reallocate staff and make those changes in real time that can help impact the fan experience. So we really use the Executive Huddle a lot to help make those real-time changes. Since we only have, 10 games to be in front of fans, we pretty much treat every game like the Super Bowl. And so if you can make that change to the fan experience there in real time, you don't even have to wait until the next game, which is what we're always trying to do on game day.
Awesome. Well, I want to be cognizant of time here. So let's close out this section of the workshop. I really just want to hone in on kind of what the future looks like. And I think we in BI and data have kind of seen the trends and come and go. 3 to 5 years ago, everybody was talking about you need a data warehouse, you need a CDP, you need your own app, those sort of things. And I think now a lot of that infrastructure is in place. Just a quick hitter, we'll go around the horn. Where do you guys kind of see the biggest area of opportunity in technology and BI in 3 to 5 years? Reese, let's start with you.
Premium seating. I think analytics has been with ticketing for close to 10 years, right, to varying degrees, but we're just at the tip of the iceberg in the premium world.
Love it. Sandeep?
I think we say we do a lot of this, but doing it right, is it predictive, right? You talked about we have the infrastructure. We can look back at a really good job. Noel mentioned real time, which I think not many teams are not there yet either, by the way. So getting to real time, but then truly getting to predictive where you know exactly everything that happens for the next game based on all the different attributes, that I think would be really powerful.
Heather, how about in you, LA?
So to Reese's point, I think that there's been data living in, a lot of different verticals for a while. One thing that we're starting to overlay is our community impact. So we attend a ton of events across Southern California, and we are, actively trying to gauge right now, like, are those driving revenue? So I think that's always a department that's really driven by gut and by feelings. And we joke about that a little bit internally, and that's not anything that's bad. It's we want to interact with the kids. We want to talk to the, underserved communities. And of course, we're going to continue doing that. We have a 10% impact model that, make sure that we are driving hours and dollars back to the LA community. But if we're sending out our street team, if we're spending time there, we also need to make sure that for those types of events, there is a return. So I think ensuring, and I don't know if that's 3 to 5 years, but that we're being smart with our resources is, really important.
Very cool. Noel, last but not least.
I think similar to what Sandeep mentioned, I think being more predictive, and I think machine learning and AI is something we all talk about a lot, but I'm not sure if anyone has truly cracked the best way to use it from a sports perspective. So I think I think in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll hopefully tap into that a little more.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. I think this was a great opening section of our workshop. And with that, I'll kick it over to Sean to dive into our next section.
Yeah, no kidding. Thanks, Cole. Changing gears here, we'll take a look at the customer service, the fan experience lens of things, and how that continues to evolve. I think as we've all experienced through the duration of COVID-19, the world of live events has drastically changed, and it's likely done so for the long term. So, what exactly does that mean for our guests, our season ticket holders? Even before the pandemic, fan experience has always been a hot topic. So organizations, want and need to get it right. Our fans feel, need to feel they're getting the appropriate value for what they're spending out of pocket to attend these games or events. So how do our organizations and how do our leagues prepare themselves? I'm thrilled to kick off this next topic and diving in here with first a pretty broad open-ended question. We'll go around the horn, but as restrictions have been lifted compared to COVID lockdown, can each of you discuss what the current customer service environment looks like from each of your guys' perspectives? Sandeep, maybe we can kick it over to you from an F&B side.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting one because I think F&B probably was hit the most during COVID, right? Whether it's touching, gloves, masks, you name it, our staff have to do it all. Supply chain with COVID too, optimizing menus. But I do think we've seen generally, this is a general statement, not for every venue, but premium kind of going back to normal. They want high touch. They want their chef's tables. They want that really, really exclusive experience. The general admissions is probably where we see the most dichotomy, whether that's more all-inclusive, more frictionless technology, speed, get back to my seat. That's been a big shift, I think, coming out of COVID.
Well said. Noel, let's build upon what Sandeep just touched on there. Current customer service environment for you guys.
Yeah, I think from customer service perspective, I agree frictionless is very important, any low touch experience that you can give fans. But also from member outreach, we can't only rely on in-person events anymore. We do have to have those virtual touch points as well. So making sure that you have a good balance of virtual events for your most dedicated fan base, as well as that in-person experience continues to evolve for them as well.
Heather, anything you'd add on top of what Noella just commentated there for?
Well, I think for us, we have experienced so many, fans just looking for something that's positive. And so, one, as a club, we've tried to be kind of a beacon of hope in the league, unfortunately. But then also, I think people are just looking to what I'm going to quasi call getting back to normal. And so as much as we can make an experience smooth, the better. There's a ton of education that we have to do being new. One, a lot of people don't know that the league has existed for a decade. So there's a ton of education that we need to get out. And I think about, even the home opener, our marketing team kind of wanted to kill me because I said, we really need to, ensure that we are messaging, download the mobile app, go, all of our tickets are virtual, and ensuring that, they had all that information up front, almost to the point where they're like, we're over messaging this. But what that meant was everybody had the app downloaded. Everybody was prepared with their mobile tickets. And so I think for us, just ensuring that we're being really, really proactive with communication, and ensuring that they can have the information that they need to get there early, to know where to park, to get into the game so that they don't miss kickoff. So I don't think that has exactly changed. I just think it's been completely reinforced by somebody not wanting another burden in their life of, oh, well, you guys are a startup and you forgot to send that information to me, or you guys are moving really fast because you're launching an NFT. And like, that's not an excuse at the end of the day, right? Like, people just want a really, really seamless experience.
Really well said. Reese, from your perspective, from the league side, current customer service environment, bring us home here.
Yeah, I think really COVID was an accelerant, right? Like certain trends that we would have gotten to in maybe 5 or 10 years, we got to right away. And now the result where we're hopefully coming out of this is it's additive, right? It hasn't replaced things we were doing in the past, but it's added to them. So the in-arena customer service table may still have a role, but you're also finding ways to communicate with your clients when you're not face-to-face, whether it's over Zoom or in another method, right? I mean, season ticket member events that could be held virtually now, the ability to engage with hockey operations and players and coaches really has gone beyond what we thought possible just 2 or 3 years ago. I think also just the need for everyone to be flexible. Things change, people's plans change, requirements change. Suddenly you see a spike in cases and maybe the handshake line or something related to the Star Spangled Banner or something, on the court or on the ice or the field has to change. And we have to be able to set customers' expectations accordingly, that you're signing up for one experience, but there's a possibility that a different experience is what ultimately ends up happening.
It's a great point. Flexibility, nimbleness, 100% agree there, Reese. Changing gears a little bit, but still related from the fan experience side. Obviously, it's crucial to customer retention. So, with that, from your perspectives, what should organizations be doing to continue to invest in it? Any new investments you guys have made that come to mind? Noelle, we'll kick it to your side from the Niners.
Yeah, so a new initiative that we launched this past season was new turnstiles to make them a little more frictionless. So essentially you'd have less staff that is needed at the gates. So fans can just tap, they can walk in. They don't need anybody to help them. So again, it's like building on that frictionless, seamless technology for folks. That's been a big one that we've done recently.
Sandeep, from a F&B standpoint, anything across the country or locally that comes to mind?
I think it's just really important to make sure you're monitoring the trends of where your fans are going in that market. So local partnerships, WMBE suppliers, things like that. We're on top of really the trends that are changing from a food and beverage and culinary experience. That, to me, I think is really resonating with the fan base.
I know just a couple games in, Heather, but maybe from start to where you're at now, or as your fan experience continues to evolve this season, areas you're keeping an eye on, things to continue to invest in from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky that, restrictions were relatively lifted, once we started, and obviously being outdoor certainly helps. But, I mean, we're still seeing, the dips in group sales like everybody else because of the, the concept around gathering a group together. So I do think that just ensuring that, doing what we say we're going to do. I think frictionless is a great example when it comes to mobile. We have the same thing when it comes to entry, just to ensure that you can tap your phone and move on. There's a lot of self-cleaning investment that's gone into, I think, most facilities at this point. But I know that's something that makes our fans feel a lot better when they're putting their phone down, to be put through, the tray that is a self-cleaning, surface, and the same thing in restrooms and high-touch areas. So I think continuing to ensure that there's, I think just a sense of safety, and that goes, across the board when it comes to fan experience, but especially from a hygiene perspective has been really, really key. So obviously there's hand sanitizing stations around. We have, little hand sanitizer packets in the suites. So those are just some little things we're doing to just help people feel a little more comfortable.
Well said. Reese, anything to add?
Sure. Heather took my my go-to on group ticket sales. It's obviously been a interesting year in the group space, and some group types I think have really struggled, whereas others maybe have been more successful than they've been in the past. But that's certainly something we're keeping our eye on. Bringing it back to Sandeep's point earlier about not just what are you doing, but how are you making the fans aware that you've done that. I think that really matters when we talk about, cleanliness and things that suddenly fans are more concerned about hygiene and high touch areas. Maybe we were already doing those things, but we didn't think that it mattered to the game day experience. We did it because it was right or because there were laws that we had to. But now fans want to know that that's happening, so they do feel more comfortable and more clean and safe when they're in our environment, in our stadiums and arenas.
Awesome. Sort of a fun question here, in no particular order, but just curious your guys' thoughts. The future of ticket packages, I think, particularly around millennials and Gen Z. Any thoughts there? I mean, obviously, the world that we live in continues to evolve, and it's clearly meeting the fans where they want to be met. But as we look specifically at millennials and Gen Z, from the team side, from the league side, anything come to mind on just what those future ticket packages continue to look like and what you guys are doing to keep them top of mind?
I'll start, I guess. I think a lot of people like to say or raise the question, is the season ticket dead? No, I don't believe the season ticket is dead. I think there's absolutely a marketplace for the full season ticket, but the season ticket is evolving, right? So not everyone wants the same thing in their season ticket. For years, teams went to market saying, hey, you can sit in the same seat for 44 or 81 home games, and that was a benefit. Well, maybe for some people that isn't a benefit. Maybe they want that flexibility where they can sit in one seat when they're at the game with their kids, and another when they're with friends, and a third location when they're with clients. And how do we provide that? So maybe they're still spending the same amount with our properties, but they want to spend it in a different way than they've traditionally done in the past. I mean, ultimately, once we fully come back from COVID, there's just so much to do with your disposable time and your disposable income. It's not necessarily that you want to be in the same spot for 44 games. Maybe you only want to go to 20 or 10, but you still want to be just as engaged, just as big a fan and as a supporter of the team as you've been in the past. But it's finding new ways to do that.
Well said. Anything, Noel, Heather, on the team side you want to build on from Reese's there?
I think a little less from the ticket package perspective, but more about like how to engage with those audiences from a brand perspective. We've done a lot with our brand marketing team has done a lot with influencer marketing. And there are a lot of influencers, like, I don't know who they are, but they really resonate with that, like the Gen Z audience. And so I think like as we continue to figure out, what the best ticket packages may be for that generation, I think marketing is a good first step into reaching those audiences and getting them engaged with your brand from the start.
Yeah, I would completely agree. The way of marketing is certainly something to consider in that space. But then, as Reese said, just flexibility, right? Like, I mean, the number of people that we've had sign on to 7-year premium contracts, I was blown away by. That sounds crazy to me, right? Like, what am I doing in 7 years? I have no idea. So like hardly anyone is like thinking, okay, I want to lock this in for that amount of time. But even on a game to game basis, I do think that the experience will vary, right? Like, so, depending on where somebody wants to sit or what amenities they want included, or if they want an experience on the field or otherwise, I think that does shift, because you don't want something stagnant all the time.
That's a great segue, and really kind of coming off of that point to our next question, discussing the ways that the fan experience will be different for someone coming into arenas and stadiums now versus 2 years ago. So Sandeep, why don't we kick it your way? Just looking at how the fan experience continues to evolve. What have you seen as some of the major changes now versus take it 2 years ago? And then we'll sort of project into the future as a second part of the question.
Yeah, I think the biggest change, certainly, which everyone's now familiar with, is this growth of frictionless in general, right? I think we know the Just Walk Out, the Zip-ins of the world. How does that scale, right? What's that cost benefit analysis? And does it make sense everywhere? Because I think we will and we are seeing buildings that will be built only with this technology. And how important is that to the fan experience? So that's probably been at the core. But as you mentioned, and I'll hold maybe until the next question, there's a lot out there in terms of inclusive and drone delivery and robots and all of these, the metaverse that's coming that could change the fan behavior too.
Noel, from your side, looking at stadiums and Levi's now versus 2 years ago, and then maybe projecting out 3 to 5 years as well.
Yeah, I think it's constantly evolving, and it's just up to us on the team or league side to keep up, right? You have to make sure that you're giving fans the best experience, that they want to come to your venue versus sitting at home and watching the game on the couch, right? So I think as long as you're investing in technology, making sure things are more digital, frictionless, seamless experience for everybody, that's definitely going to be where I think we're going to continue to go in the next 3 to 5 years. And there's probably things that we haven't even thought about that will come up as well.
Heather, anything on top?
Well, I think Sandeep mentioned this earlier, but just in how the pandemic really, accelerated some of these investment decisions. So, and I think about when I was in Portland with the Trailblazers, we had been pushing to do grab and go, and our lead, there really wanted to do grab and go from a concession perspective. And then pandemic hit, and it was like, well, that's where the money's going to go immediately, is just reinvesting into making those, again, like whether that in the future is drone delivery, or when we saw pre-made cocktails become a really big spike, right? Just ensuring that like what the fan is looking for, that we're flexible to that. And so I do think that, following along with what the consumer trends are, but then also like for us, I remember, in San Francisco, like we also, based on fan, feedback, we helped push the concession partner along to say like, this is what people are going for. It is like, well, we don't know if that's legal because of the high ABV. And like, we were able to work together to get that done. So I do just think across the board, ensuring that, what people are saying and what they're looking for from outside the venue, to, Noel's point, if I can sit on my couch and if I want a canned cocktail, but you don't do that in venue or whatever that, product is, I might just decide to stay home. And I think that's important to, educate people internally that like that decision is very real on a day-to-day basis.
Really well said. Reese, bring us home with any final thoughts on this topic before we switch gears.
Sure. I'll touch on the continued evolution in the premium space. I mean, we're not that far away from, looking backwards, where every arena had, pick a number, 75 suites that were all exactly the same, and that was it. And we have started to get into more diversified, smaller premium products. I think there's a huge market for people who want something more than just a seat when they go to a game. But as we continue to add more products, we make the premium experience more accessible, right? So you don't have to buy 24 suite tickets necessarily to get in. But what do we have? You have bunker suites, you have Lowe's products, you have different party decks, continued evolution of that experience to match what you might get outside the arena and really bring that inside the arena to see the event live.
Sandeep, you mentioned this, so I got to ask before we turn the page, but I saw that Levy is working with some drone delivery. I think maybe it was at Purdue. Can you talk a little bit about that and just some of the other innovative tech you're seeing in the market space?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting week. I mean, I'll be honest, one of the questions I don't think we talked about was, who are we looking for outside influence? And I would say Kroger, Amazon for us, we know they invested a lot in drones. So it just kind of piqued our interest to say, well, why are they doing this? What business problem are they solving for? And then we looked at it from a truly food and beverage pain point. Whereas if you're in a remote location, in this case, it was Purdue's baseball stadium, they don't actually have a concession stand there, but their fans want concessions. So we found an area where we had cooking, and we're like, well, wait, we have the company, we know what we're going to do. And so over the weekend, a couple of weekends ago, the drone would literally pick up a combo meal, drop it off into the locker, and the fans could pick up their food and beverage. Is this the future in sports? I'm not sure, but certainly for those racetracks and festivals and tailgates, this actually has legs. So I think for us, it was actually an interesting week, because we also did a metaverse test with the Blues, which was very different, where a fan could actually scan a QR code. The locker room appeared as it was, a real locker room, and you could one-click shop for jerseys. We had 3,000 sessions in a couple of days. So two very different technologies, but I think to the earlier point, it's kind of meeting the fan where they are. This is what's happening outside of our industry. So how do we get there to them?
very, very insightful. Thank you guys. I think that was great dialogue here. I'm going to kick it back to Cole for him and I to introduce the last topic of today's workshop, the last 15, 20 minutes or so.
I can't wait to go to a game and get a drone delivery seat order, Sandeep. Looking forward to it. But no, as Sean mentioned, great discussion. Just our last subject here is kind of maintaining relationships. So as the industry really gets back to full strength coming out of COVID and getting back to full attendance, what are the best ways that we're kind of maintaining those touch points with, whether it be season ticket members or corporate partners, to maintain that engaged and loyal fan base that we've had, both from COVID, and I think we've kind of hit on it too, the potential economic factors that are impacting our fans' disposable income. We have to ensure they have a great experience. So with that, let's dive into kind of how clubs are maintaining relationships with those key stakeholders. Capturing the attention of people in this digital first world. Heather said it. I could sit on my couch and drink my own canned cocktail. Why do I need to go to the stadium? Some teams we've seen personalized gift boxes. We've seen Facebook fan groups. There's a lot of really forced innovation that's happened over the last 2 years, and would love to just hear from the panel on what you think are some of the best ways that organizations are engaging with their fans. So with that, let's start with you, Reese.
Thanks, Cole. I think it's important to meet the fan where the fan is, right? So if that means, we all look at our phone however many times a day, like what are you doing to evolve in the app space, in the digital space, in that second screen? Obviously, number one goal is you want to get them inside the arena, right? We all need to have full stadiums and arenas. But for our fan base goes way beyond those 18,000 or 70,000 or whatever the number is fans that are going to come in, right? How do we touch people in other markets? How do we get them when they're not with us? How do we engage over road games? Again, that's what they're accustomed to in so many other facets of their life. Through COVID, they just started doing everything on their phone, right? How many of us go to the grocery store less than we used to, or go to other, we do things in person less, right? Like that's just been an evolution. We're convenient. I think we have to find a way to match that as we deliver content from our teams.
Awesome. Noel, anything in the Bay Area or just in general that you've seen other teams do that you really enjoy from a fan engagement perspective?
Yeah, I think, as we said, I think you do have to focus on digital a bit more than you used to. And so, meeting that fan where they are, I think is very important. And I think like looking a little more globally too, so it's not just the fans that are coming to your stadium or your arena, but it's your fans that may not live close by and they may not be able to experience that. So, like something we did this past season was launch a supporters club. So that way we're able to not only target our fans domestically and give them, virtual experiences, but we can also expand globally as well. And, get someone in the UK or Mexico, for example, and they can, tune into an alumni Zoom session, which is something that they wouldn't be able to do, locally, but we're able to give them that digital experience. So continuing to evolve in that space, I think is the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've seen that too with just the leagues opening up marketing rights to international markets as well. So Heather, I know you mentioned NFTs. Is there anything else super innovative you guys are working on in LA?
Well, I would say, and our head of revenue talks about this a lot, but like we are an NFT and Web3 company. So again, going back to our roots and how we were founded, there's a whole compilation there of out of the Me Too movement with some A-list celebrities, Natalie Portman mainly, and then a combination of a lot of VC folks and Alexis Ohanian. And so we bring together as an organization like this incredible diverse skill set. And so we aren't led as being putting a team on the field. Now, of course, that is the FC brand, right? Like we are hosting events, but we have, entire strategies around what we're going to do from an NFT perspective, which really helps from, the global engagement that we've been discussing. We did an NFT last year when we released our crest. So we broke our crest up into 5,000 pieces and, it was very limited first thing that we did. And it was July 1st last year. And then we recently launched on April 29 our Proof of Fandom NFT collection. So that'll drop every game for the entirety of the 2022 season, but certainly something that we're talking about developing long term. And then, that's not everybody's space. However, like just like a lot of communities have been locked out of, financial institutions or other opportunities to make money in the past, like this is something that we're trying to get more women involved, more diverse populations involved from, an NFT or cryptocurrency perspective. So we're really trying to open this up and broaden the market. We have some incredible statistics that I don't think I'm allowed to share from the Proof of Fandom drop on the April 29 event. So that'll be really exciting once we're able to go out with that, just in terms of how many fans really did get in and engage. And then, a lot of what we're doing from an education perspective, we have so many, I mentioned our community impact models earlier, but educating fans that we are doing this is incredibly important. And I think we're starting to figure out, how we do that, how it's not really overwhelming, how it's, not enough. And so we do a lot of IG lives as well. So that's been a really easy tool for us to just host a quick panel and say, hey, our president, our VP of soccer ops and somebody else is going to be hopping on and talking about our community impact in this space or about this new initiative that we're launching. So those kind of like quick hits, I think, are also really helping keep the consistency in content, that it's not just, okay, we have to wait for the newsletter in 2 weeks, and then that's the only format in which people are digesting our information. So I do think that, again, relying on digital and not necessarily of course, we did a preseason town hall and it was an hour and I talked a lot about parking and downloading the mobile app, but like doing those components, I think in shorter, bits as well has been really key. And then along with that, I would say, of course, there's the digital component, but then we've also really collaborated really early with a lot of our partners. So, and saying, okay, well, Jane Walker's going to host an Anthem release party downtown. Let's get our 15 supporter group leaders down there with us. So again, I think it's kind of hand in hand of like where people are in terms of, do I want to come to events? Do I not? What behind the scenes access can I get? And we're trying to be really thoughtful in that space.
Quality over quantity. I think it's a great approach that you guys are taking there. Perfect. Well, switching gears just a little bit here. I think one of the current challenges every team, and I mean, the world as a whole is facing right now is the labor shortages. So Sandeep, I know we've spoke a little bit about this offline, but would love to hear and then open it up to the panel for other thoughts. But how is E15 and Levy as a whole combating that challenge with your partners? And let's dive into kind of how we're making sure that that fan experience is good and there's people or there's robots or drones to really help automate some things.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's not just impacting us for sure, right? I think food and beverage is prone to it because you have a lot of roles that are back of house and people just don't want to do those roles. So we actually do think it's a permanent challenge. But even our team partners from ticket takers, ushers, and security, we're all seeing the same thing, right? So to us, it kind of comes down to, I would say, a spectrum of options. One is how do you make the job more appealing, whether that's through benefits, free tickets, really making that a good experience, free food is part of it. So just trying to get better talent in and making it more than just what it used to be, which is very transactional. The benefit of a Levy, Compass, and kind of a set of teams in one area, we try to share, right? And say, hey, you can work year round with the Warriors, the Giants, et cetera, 49ers, kind of build your ecosystem as part of that. But truly, technology is going to be a driving factor. And it doesn't mean just robots or drones replace people. It's how do you shift roles in general to make them more fan-facing and then use the technology to drive some of the back-of-house efficiencies that people just don't want to do. And so we're looking at it from all different perspectives, but it's a serious challenge that we don't think is going away for a very long time.
Super cool. Rest of the panel, any thoughts on kind of labor and staffing right now?
I mean, certainly in every position that we've hired, it's been a really interesting mix of candidates. Now being, kind of the hot, sexy team in LA, that certainly has its draws. A lot of people do want to work somewhere that they care about. And again, coming back to our mission and vision and how we were founded, I think a lot of people are, have been excited about the opportunity to have something that, have a job that is actually making impact at the end of the day. But I do think it's also just a little more of that customized conversation. So, I've certainly heard of people after the interview, what used to be the converse of the candidate sending a thank you note or sending a gift or a tchotchke or whatever to be memorable. I'm hearing of, hiring, in the opposite way that like as the hiring manager, you might be sending a gift and saying, hey, thanks for your time. Here's a $10, coffee gift card because you told me that your favorite thing is a vanilla latte. So I think that that's just a shift in terms of, appreciating the employee, rather than the, adage that was probably all of our like growing up in this industry. of like, there's 500 people who want your job. And therefore I can pay you very little and, make you work 85 hours a week. So I do think that, managing people's expectations and, really being very, very honest of what they're getting themselves into. To Sandeep's point, just making sure that if they are going to be working back of house, that they know that, right? That they don't feel like, oh, I'm going to be the face of the organization when really you're going to be doing admin work. So we've been having very honest conversations with, our candidates to say, this is what our culture is like. This is the benefit, but I'm also going to be honest, it's really fast paced. That might not be for you. So we're also helping, I think, self-screen a little bit in that regard, just to ensure that we are getting people on board at the end of the day who understand what our brand is, who are aligned with our values, and who kind of know what they're getting themselves into, not just, come sell tickets or come do analytics or come do this, and you'll kind of figure it out once you get here.
Cool. I'll add on top of that. I mean, what we've seen in the last 6 months is just, at least in the analytics space, tremendous opportunity and job growth. I've seen more postings than we've ever seen before, pre-COVID. And I think historically, we all know this is a very incestuous industry, but the biggest differentiator was you had some people who were geographically agnostic and would live wherever and bounce around between teams, and others who were like, hey, I'm from city X and that's where I'm living. And so I have 2 teams I can work for and that's it. And that is sort of going away, right? We're starting to see more and more remote workers or some kind of hybrid setup or some kind of just more flexibility. I mean, Cole, yourself being an example, like it's really increasing the talent pool that teams can draw upon. They're no longer restricted to their own market in many ways.
I love that. Go ahead, Noel.
I think too, it's more of like the intangibles too about the experience, like similar, like when you work for a team or league, like you care so much about your fan experience. And you have to do the same thing for your employees too. You should be focusing the same amount of time on that as well, because that's extremely important.
Awesome. Well, I think that is a great conclusion as we all kind of head into the work week here, to keep in mind what everybody's going through, both at home and at work. But with that, I just want to thank everybody for attending today's workshop. As we mentioned at the top of the panel, any questions that were dropped in the chat, we will try to address throughout the event today. And feel free, I think everybody has an open LinkedIn, and if you have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out. Sean, anything else you want to add?
Absolutely. Just want to thank again today's panelists, Heather, Reese, Sandeep, Noel. Appreciate your candor, your discussion. I think we're coming up on the end of our time here, but we really appreciate the audience hopping on and joining this customer service and retention workshop, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day and enjoys the remainder of this 2022 National Sports Forum Virtual Spring Summit. I think Cole said it well. Feel free to continue to connect and have this conversation via LinkedIn and elsewhere, and we hope to see everybody in person here maybe down the road as well. So thanks again, and have a great rest of the day.